The story begins 3 years ago. A car accident turns genius medical student Woo-gyeom into a comatose patient. But when he suddenly opens his eyes, even his doctor is stunned. His blood has changed in a way no one can explain. That unknown mutation is what allows him to survive. But the life he gets back is not a normal one. Every day, Woo-gyeom is tortured by pain, as if the moment of the crash is being repeated inside his nerves again and again. Since he has already come close to death once, Woo-gyeom stops caring about risk. He turns his own body into the first test subject. Any drug that might reduce the pain, no matter how dangerous, is injected into him. He pushes himself to the edge of death over and over. Then one day, the pain disappears. Woo-gyeom not only cures the after effects of his coma, but also discovers what he believes is the key to treating terminal diseases. But instead of stopping there, he crosses a line no one can come back from. To accelerate his research, Woo-gyeom kills 17 people and uses them as human test subjects. In the end, he develops a special treatment that appears capable of curing diseases medicine has never defeated. One day, Woo-gyeom abducts a terminal cancer patient. Just as he is about to drain the man's blood for his experiment, the police burst into the lab and arrest him. Woo-gyeom does not resist. Instead, he calmly warns prosecutor Cha Yi-yeon that the victim must not undergo any other surgery. If another treatment is mixed with Woo-gyeom's method, the man may never recover. After the arrest, investigators search Woo-gyeom's lab and discover a horrifying amount of human tissue. During interrogation, Cha Yi-yeon demands an explanation. Woo-gyeom remains calm and says the remains are only research materials. He says he is developing a medicine that can cure all terminal diseases and heal any illness in the world. But for the treatment to work, he claims, live human experimentation is necessary. Yi-yeon asks whether the victims were killed first or whether they died during the experiments. Woo-gyeom says it was different every time. To him, the order barely matters. He shows no guilt. DNA results confirm that one victim is still missing, but Woo-gyeom refuses to reveal the location. Instead, he argues that what he did should not strictly be called murder. He keeps trying to blur the line between killing people and performing human experiments. That twisted logic enrages Yi-yeon. She slams the table and reminds him that the police found remains from more than 5 people. Woo-gyeom simply picks up a pen and writes a strange equation, 17 to 17. This is the core of his madness. He killed 17 people, but he believes he saved the whole world. In his own calculation, the final number of deaths is 0, because his cure will save more lives than he took. The police eventually find 7 bodies based on his statements, but Woo-gyeom still refuses to reveal where the other 10 are. At the same time, reporter Jo visits legendary defense lawyer Park Han-jun. Woo-gyeom wants Han-jun to defend him. Han-jun used to work in the Central Investigation Department before becoming a lawyer, and he has never lost a case. Even prosecutors fear him, but behind his impressive career is one private weakness: his daughter, Min-seo. Min-seo suffers from Batten disease, a rare inherited neurodegenerative illness. Han-jun has searched everywhere for treatment and failed again and again. In desperation, he once paid 20 billion won to a man who claimed he could get a cure. The man disappeared with the money. Reporter Jo's offer is huge, but Han-jun is not interested at first. Woo-gyeom expected that. He told Jo that if Han-jun refuses, Jo only needs to mention one name: Moon Se-guk. Moon Se-guk is the con artist who took Han-jun's 20 billion won. As expected, Han-jun immediately visits Woo-gyeom in detention. Woo-gyeom tells him directly that he killed Moon Se-guk. He also says Moon never had any special medicine. It was all a scam. Then Woo-gyeom changes the subject. He says he can cure Min-seo's Batten disease. If Han-jun helps him avoid conviction, Woo-gyeom will pay him 20 billion won. That money is the same amount Han-jun lost to Moon. When Han-jun still refuses to commit, Woo-gyeom says that once Han-jun meets the patients he has cured, he will come back on his own. On the way home, Han-jun receives 10 billion won as a retainer. He asks reporter Jo how he met Woo-gyeom. Jo says Woo-gyeom contacted him 1 week before the arrest. At first, Jo thought he was insane, but after seeing terminal patients recover with his own eyes, Jo began to believe him. Meanwhile, Detective Gong Min-chol gives Yi-yeon new forensic information. All of the victims' bodies contain the same drug component, and it is extremely similar to a new American treatment that has only recently been developed. But Woo-gyeom was using that component before the American research was publicly announced. That means his work is ahead of the world's top medical research. Gong also says Woo-gyeom was once in a severe car accident, remained unconscious for 3 years, and woke up completely changed. His intelligence and research ability seemed to advance dramatically, as if something inside him had been rewritten. Yi-yeon studies the victims and finds another pattern. Every one of them had a criminal record. The next day, Yi-yeon interrogates Woo-gyeom again, hoping to learn where the remaining bodies are. Woo-gyeom keeps insisting that he sacrificed lives to save countless terminal patients. Yi-yeon does not care about the treatment. He tells Woo-gyeom that even without a confession, the evidence is enough to charge him. But because the disposal sites remain unknown, Yi-yeon's superiors order him to use an appropriate bargaining chip and make Woo-gyeom talk. Yi-yeon has no choice. He approaches Woo-gyeom again, hides his disgust, and pretends to be curious about the treatment. This touches Woo-gyeom's deepest obsession. To him, the medicine is not proof of his crime. It is proof that he has changed medicine forever. His eyes light up as he describes the beginning. After pouring experimental fluid into a flower pot, a wilted flower bloomed again the next day. When he added it to a fish tank, a dying fish recovered. A cat with an injured leg also healed and began running again. Then Woo-gyeom talks about his human experiments. When he reaches the 17th subject, Hong Jae-gwang, his voice fills with pride. That was the experiment that succeeded. Woo-gyeom's madness is not random. He desperately wants his research to be recognized. To him, the courtroom is not a place to judge his crimes. It is a stage where his greatness can be displayed. He does not want a normal plea deal. Trading confession for a reduced sentence would insult his work. What he wants is Yi-yeon on his side. He wants to perform a medical demonstration in court, prove that he can save lives without surgery, and force the world to forgive what he calls necessary sacrifice. So Woo-gyeom makes a deal. Yi-yeon will stand with him in court, and Woo-gyeom will reveal the body disposal sites. The police follow his information, and the remains of every victim are finally found, including Hong Jae-gwang. Meanwhile, Han-jun and reporter Jo find one of the people Woo-gyeom supposedly cured. The patient had suffered from childhood paralysis and spent years in a wheelchair. Now he stands in front of Han-jun, unsteady but clearly moving on his own. For Han-jun, the sight is devastating. All the failed treatments for Min-so, all the despair after losing 20 billion won to Moon Se-guk, and all his disgust toward Woo-gyeom are suddenly pushed aside by one thought. Maybe this killer really can save his daughter. At the prosecution office, Yi-yeon reports the evidence to his superiors, but he breaks his promise to Woo-gyeom. His desire to prove himself matters more than the deal. Yi-yeon lies. He hides Woo-gyeom's request to prove the treatment in court and says Woo-gyeom has been mocking the prosecution, deceiving the public, and looking down on the justice system. The trial begins. Yi-yeon appears in court with sharp confidence. He presents photos of the victims' remains and asks why a medical researcher would destroy bodies in such a way. He asks why Hong Jae-gwang's blood was completely drained. To Yi-yeon, Woo-gyeom is not a scientist. He is a murderer hiding behind medicine. Then Yi-yeon reveals a key fact. One of the victims was the driver who caused Woo-gyeom's car accident 5 years earlier. If this was not revenge, how else can it be explained? Yi-yeon argues that the entire case was a planned revenge. Woo-gyeom specifically chose adult criminals whose disappearances would be harder to investigate, making this a calculated serial murder case. Woo-gyeom only smiles. He does not think he is guilty. He thinks the world simply does not understand his sacrifice. Han-jun stands to defend him. He admits Yi-yeon's argument is logical, but says the prosecution is ignoring the most important question. How did Woo-gyeom cure those patients? Han-jun requests that 6 recovered terminal patients testify at the next hearing. After court, Han-jun asks Woo-gyeom why he handled the bodies the way he did. Woo-gyeom rejects the word destruction. In his mind, that only applies if the act is viewed as murder. To him, it is no different from dissecting a frog in a lab. Han-jun asks why Hong Jae-gwang's blood was drained. Woo-gyeom says Hong's experiment succeeded. That was when he found the key to producing the treatment. Han-jun is disgusted by his lack of remorse. doctors. He asks whether Woo-gyeom has already accepted murder as a normal part of experimentation. If Hong's experiment had failed, Han-jun says, the victims would not have stopped at 17. Han-jun tells Woo-gyeom that the trial must focus on proving his medical ability. If the lie collapses, he will face the death penalty. Woo-gyeom is not worried. In his mind, someone who can cure terminal disease will never be sentenced to death. Han-jun reminds him that ability only matters if the court recognizes it. Woo-gyeom answers by pressing directly on Han-jun's weakness. He says Han-jun must prove the treatment in court because only if Woo-gyeom is released can Min-seo live. Getting the witnesses to appear is harder than expected. Some patients do not want to reveal their medical history. Some fear public attention. Families refuse because they want the patients to live quietly. Min-gyeong, who wants to follow Han-jun and help his work, volunteers. She is good with people and manages to secure 2 witnesses. The first is the mother of the patient who had childhood paralysis. The second is a patient who once had late-stage leukemia, but Woo-gyeom ruins the preparation. Without Han-jun's permission, he sends threatening letters to the witnesses, warning that if they refuse to testify, their personal information will be exposed. Han-jun angrily confronts him and warns that anything related to trial strategy must go through him. At the second hearing, the first witness describes her son's treatment. Woo-gyeom brought only a normal medical bag. He injected the boy once in the arm. Soon after, the boy became deeply tired and fell asleep. Before dawn, he suddenly stood up. Just as the defense begins to gain momentum, Yi-yeon strikes back. He asks how many hospitals diagnosed the child with incurable paralysis and whether the mother told each new hospital the previous diagnosis. When she says she visited 7 hospitals and shared the earlier opinions, Yi-yeon changes direction. He reveals that the witness recently received more than 80 million won in insurance money under her son's name. He asks whether she may have disguised another disease as polio to collect insurance. Then Yi-yeon calls a forensic researcher. The researcher explains that if a previous diagnosis is passed from doctor to doctor, later doctors may repeat the same mistake. Polio has never had a true recovery case, while another condition with similar symptoms can recover. The testimony collapses. Yi-yeon then brings in the second witness, who is already in the courthouse. The man refuses to defend Woo-gyeom. Instead, he calls him a fraud and mentions the threatening letter. After court, Han-jun asks why he testified that way. The witness says his disease has returned. Yi-yeon hears this and later questions him privately. The witness admits he truly recovered after Woo-gyeom's treatment, but because Woo-gyeom was not a licensed doctor, he later went to a hospital for additional care. After receiving hospital treatment, his disease came back. Yi-yeon remembers Woo-gyeom's warning. Patients he cured must not receive other treatments afterward. For the first time, Yi-yeon wavers. Han-jun is furious at Woo-gyeom for sending the threatening letters. To keep Woo-gyeom from being sentenced to death, Han-jun submits 3 key pieces of evidence. First, he presents Woo-gyeom's old research materials from medical school. Woo-gyeom had submitted them to Chum Medical Group, and their research team had evaluated his blood therapy proposal highly. They even discussed practical development, but then came the car accident that trapped him in a coma for 3 years. In that long darkness, the dream he once had of becoming a doctor was destroyed, leaving only pain and despair. Second, Han-jun explains the role of Jo Gyung-chan, the driver who caused the crash. The driver escaped punishment by claiming mental weakness. Not long after, he killed another child while driving drunk. When Woo-gyeom woke and learned this, he decided that serious criminals who slipped through loopholes in the law would become his research subjects. Han-jun presents the criminal records of all 17 victims. Each had committed serious crimes, and some had taken lives. He argues that Woo-gyeom never targeted innocent, ordinary citizens. Third, Han-jun reveals the truth about the treatment. Woo-gyeom's so-called medicine is his own blood. His mutated blood contains therapeutic cells. It cannot be injected directly into people, but if safe cells are cultivated from it, they can repair diseased tissue and restore damaged cells. The courtroom falls silent. Woo-gyeom smiles. Han-jun is not asking the court to excuse murder. He is asking for one medical demonstration, so the research that could save countless lives can be seen. For Han-jun, Min-seo's life matters more than anything. Even if Woo-gyeom is a killer, he is also the only hope Han-jun's daughter has. Yi-yeon sees it differently. To him, the law cannot ignore committed murders because of possible future salvation. Even if the victims were criminals, Woo-gyeom had no right to kill them. 17 lives are still 17 lives. Yi-yeon requests the death penalty. Han-jun asks whether Yi-yeon is afraid the medical demonstration might succeed. Then he turns to the jury and asks a painful question. If the man on trial is not only a serial killer, but also someone who can truly cure terminal illness, is that not something everyone in the room secretly hopes for? Han-jun asks the court to give Woo-gyeom one chance to prove his ability. The judge does not decide immediately and adjourns the hearing. Afterward, Han-jun tells Woo-gyeom that his blood will be analyzed by the National Forensic Service and the American Society of Hematology. The final result depends on official review. Han-jun also asks about the missing research notebook. Woo-gyeom casually blames the police, saying it is not surprising they lost something important. His indifference feels wrong. The missing notebook becomes a new question hanging over the case. Yi-yeon then speaks to the press. When a reporter asks how the prosecution views the defense request to test Woo-gyeom's treatment, Yi-yeon fires back. If the reporter's own family had been murdered by Woo-gyeom, would they still want the court to verify the killer's ability? Yi-yeon says everyone is being tricked, but after the press conference, Yi-yeon asks Detective Gong to reinvestigate the case. He suspects someone may be behind Woo-gyeom. One person alone should not have been able to create the treatment and the medical process so completely. Gong reports that security footage near the arrest site showed a man in black, but the lighting was too dark to identify him. The footage is being restored. Han-jun, also disturbed by the missing notebook, wonders whether the police already discovered Woo-gyeom's ability and whether someone else is helping him. He thinks of one person, Professor Han Sang-ho, the attending doctor who treated Woo-gyeom after the accident. When Han-jun visits Professor Han, the professor dismisses Woo-gyeom's claims as lies. He says blood cannot save people, but his reaction suggests he is hiding something. As Han-jun leaves, he notices a suspicious, unfamiliar car near the house, though he does not focus on it at the time. At the next hearing, the blood analysis results are disappointing. At this stage, science cannot verify that Woo-gyeom's blood has special therapeutic effects. Yi-yeon again asks for the death penalty. Han-jun argues that motive matters for sentencing. The prosecution keeps labeling Woo-gyeom a serial killer while ignoring why he committed the crimes. Woo-gyeom suffered long-term physical and psychological torture after the accident. His original intention, Han-jun says, was to heal people in pain like himself. He admits Woo-gyeom committed crimes during the development process, but says the American blood experts have at least acknowledged a mutation. The blood may have played a real role in the witnesses' recoveries. Han-jun begs the court not to execute him and asks again for a medical demonstration. After deliberation, the court acknowledges that Woo-gyeom acted with a stated intention to treat patients. It also acknowledges the academic significance of the mutated blood, but the safety of the blood as medicine is extremely low, and the court cannot confirm that he truly cured the witnesses. The court rejects the medical demonstration and sentences Woo-gyeom to death. In prison, a guard approaches Hong Jae-gwang's younger brother and tells him Woo-gyeom killed his brother. The man begins shaking with rage. The guard's action is clearly directed by someone else. Meanwhile, Detective Gong tracks the man from the restored footage, but when he finds the suspect, the man is already dead at home. Inside the house is a photo of the dead man with Professor Han. The victim is Song Min-soo, a former researcher at Chum Hospital, who later founded Jinnam Medical Research Institute with Professor Han. Gong believes Song's death was no accident. Yi-yeon investigates the research institute and runs into a suspicious man. The man flees and escapes by jumping from the second floor. Police identify him as Shin Ho-chang, a man convicted of murder but only given a suspended sentence. The prosecutor who handled that case was Yi-yeon's superior, Chief Oh Hyun-duk. In another case, Shin and Professor Han were both defendants, and the prosecutor was again Oh Hyun-duk. The case ended without indictment due to lack of evidence. The connections trouble Yi-yeon. He remembers a warning from Pyo Kang-won, an aide to Assemblyman Baek Sang-hwa. Pyo said someone had already handled matters related to Woo-gyeom before Yi-yeon ever arrested him. Pyo also warned Yi-yeon not to dig too deep or he might get hurt. On the defense side, Han-jun visits Woo-gyeom and says that if they want permission for a medical demonstration in the appeal, they need an undeniable healing case. He gives Woo-gyeom the file of a terminally ill prisoner and secretly arranges to place Woo-gyeom in the same cell. Woo-gyeom understands the plan, but says it is too slow. He will change his style and risk his own life. That night, Woo-gyeom is moved into a holding cell. Inside are the terminal prisoner and Hong Jae-gwang's younger brother. Seeking revenge, Hong's brother and 2 other prisoners attack Woo-gyeom while he sleeps. But the attack is part of Woo-gyeom's plan. During the struggle, Woo-gyeom is stabbed in the chest. He then manipulates the chaos so that the terminal prisoner is also stabbed. Both injured men are sent to the hospital. Before losing consciousness, Woo-gyeom tells the doctors to call Professor Han. Professor Han injects Woo-gyeom's blood into the terminal prisoner. Soon, a miracle occurs. The prisoner's wound heals, and even his congenital corneal damage is repaired. Han-jun immediately has reporter Joe make the case public. Once the story breaks, public opinion erupts. People begin accepting that Woo-gyeom can truly heal patients. Under that pressure, the appeal court agrees to allow a public medical demonstration. A few days later, Woo-gyeom is taken to Hantan University Hospital. With the judge and medical team watching, he draws his blood, transforms it into a white substance, and injects it into a terminally ill boy. Before long, the boy recovers. Han-jun finally feels hope for Min-so, but a new player enters the game, Chae Jung-soo, the chairman of Chum Medical Center. Yi-yeon still wants Woo-gyeom punished, but the successful treatment changes everything. At trial, Yi-yeon tries to focus on relapses after treatment, but Han-jun argues that relapses happened only because patients later received incompatible treatments from other hospitals. The court reaches a special verdict. Woo-gyeom is still a murderer, but because he has the extraordinary ability to cure terminal diseases and may save many lives, the court orders him to work in a designated isolation facility, treating terminal patients as an alternative punishment. This is not forgiveness. Woo-gyeom must spend the rest of his life treating people. If he refuses, the original death sentence will be carried out. Han-jun is relieved because Min-so now has a chance. Yi-yeon is furious. He lost the case and is discarded by his superiors, sent away to a remote post in Namhae. Before leaving, however, he discovers a shocking secret. Professor Han once performed illegal human experiments without the victim's consent. The subject was Lee Woo-gyeom himself. That means Woo-gyeom was cured under forced experimental conditions. Through manipulation by Chief Oh and Assemblyman Beck, Professor Han's illegal experiments were buried. Yi-yeon confronts Oh and asks whether he knows Professor Han. Oh's reaction makes it clear he is deeply tied to the conspiracy. Yi-yeon tells Han-jun, but Han-jun shows little interest. He already knew from his time as a prosecutor that Oh was a dangerous old fox. Han-jun then visits Woo-gyeom in prison and tells him Chum Medical has provided a special facility where he will be guarded while treating terminal patients. Woo-gyeom is not surprised, as if he expected this. Behind the scenes, Chae Jung-soo had approached Han-jun and asked him to persuade Woo-gyeom to help develop the treatment. In exchange, Chae promised to give Min-seo priority treatment. Otherwise, patients would be chosen by lottery and Min-seo might not be selected. Assemblyman Beck tries to block the ruling, but other politicians refuse to support him. They believe Woo-gyeom's ability can cure citizens and give them political credit. Chae tells Beck not to touch Woo-gyeom. Right now, money matters more than political power. Beck wants political success. Chae wants to turn Woo-gyeom into profit. But Chae is not as calm as he looks. He orders his men to find Professor Han as quickly as possible. If they cannot bring him back alive, they must bring back his body intact. No one knows exactly what Chae fears. Perhaps Professor Han can expose the truth about the old, illegal experiments. When Chae's men arrive at Professor Han's home, it is empty. He has already escaped. At the same time, Min-seo's condition is getting worse. She is now losing her vision, and doctors warn Han-jun that without treatment, she has very little time left. Yi-yeon visits Chae before leaving and asks whether it is true that Professor Han performed human experiments without consent. Chae only smiles and gives no answer. The treatment facility provided by Chum Medical looks luxurious, but it is a gilded cage. Cameras are everywhere, and professional security guards watch Woo-gyeom around the clock. When Woo-gyeom checks the patient list, he realizes Min-seo's name is not on it. Someone has tampered with the order. Then Woo-gyeom is taken to room 7. Inside, Professor Han is waiting. Whatever Professor Han shows him, Woo-gyeom only asks one thing: is everything ready? Meanwhile, Chae Jung-soo tells Cha Yi-yeon that Woo-gyeom's mother signed the consent form for the old human experiment as his guardian. But Detective Gong later tells Yi-yeon something that destroys that explanation. Woo-gyeom and his mother only had each other, and she died before the experiment could have taken place. When Woo-gyeom was in a vegetative state, he had no legal family guardian. That means the so-called guardian signature was fabricated. Professor Han has also bribed security at the Chum facility and manages to reach Woo-gyeom. He gives him an escape route map. Woo-gyeom and Professor Han seem to have made a deal. If Woo-gyeom escapes, he will help Professor Han complete his lifelong dream of developing a cure for terminal diseases. Whether Professor Han is acting from a doctor's conscience or from selfish ambition remains unclear. Perhaps he and Woo-gyeom simply need each other. Woo-gyeom tells Professor Han to hide at his old house, but Professor Han is already being watched by Chae's men. Reporter Jo and Min Young continue their own investigation. They begin to suspect Woo-gyeom's mother's death. The official conclusion was heart paralysis, but Min Young notices something wrong. In most cases, someone suffering heart paralysis would collapse backward, not fall forward into a river. Her observation wakes reporter Jo up. The death that looked like an accident may have been a carefully staged murder. Yi-yeon and Detective Gong also prepare to search Woo-gyeom's house. Near the area, they spot a suspicious figure and give chase, but the person escapes. Instead, they run into reporter Jo, who is investigating the same place. The person who escaped was Professor Han, but before he can hide safely, he encounters Chae's men. Soon afterward, a notebook is delivered to Chae. It contains Woo-gyeom's detailed treatment notes. Chae is thrilled and immediately gathers his people to crack the secret. One researcher says they need a month. Chae demands results in 1 week. He does not care how many lives the treatment could save. He cares about money and power. Reporter Jo tells Yi-yeon he is chasing a major exclusive and cannot share everything yet. In truth, everyone is now searching for the same thing, the truth behind Woo-gyeom's mother's death. Years ago, after Woo-gyeom disappeared, his mother searched the city desperately. She put up missing person flyers and went everywhere looking for him. Exhaustion, lack of sleep, and depression destroyed her health. But the old case report directly ruled out homicide. The officer in charge was Detective Gong. Yi-yeon takes Gong to a meal and quietly learns that the prosecutor partnered with him at the time was Chief Oh, Yi-yeon's current superior. This makes the conspiracy feel even larger. After they part, Gong calls a director at Chum Medical and tells him to control the people around him. If Yi-yeon catches them, things will become troublesome. Soon, Woo-gyeom begins official treatment at the Chum facility. The first patient is treated successfully. Han-jun hears the news, but he cannot feel happy. Woo-gyeom notices his expression and immediately understands that Min-so must be in bad condition. She is. Min-so's disease has worsened, and she is now constantly close to death. Han-jun has no strength left. The only hope he can still hold is Woo-gyeom. To save his daughter, Han-jun kneels before him. That night, Han-jun visits Yi-yeon. Whatever his calculation may be, he gets straight to the point. He is willing to share his information and help Yi-yeon uncover Woo-gyeom's true motive for killing. After making that deal, Han-jun receives Yi-yeon's files and learns that Detective Gong handled the death of Woo-gyeom's mother. Min Young adds that when she covered the scene years ago, everyone suspected something was wrong, but no one dared to speak openly. Han-jun divides the investigation into 3 directions. He will question Woo-gyeom about his mother's death and Professor Han. Reporter Jo will investigate Chum Medical and the illegal treatment case. Min Young will follow the line connected to Assemblyman Beck. Then Chum Medical reports that Woo-gyeom's next patient is unusual. The patient has Crohn's disease and hemophilia, and needs special equipment available only at Ewell Hospital. Woo-gyeom must be moved out of the Chum facility. Chae fears something may go wrong, so he orders extra security. Under heavy guard, Woo-gyeom is taken to Ewell Hospital. At that moment, Yi-yeon receives a call from Detective Gong. Professor Han's body has been found, and the time of death seems to match the day they went to Woo-gyeom's house. The suspicious figure they chased was probably Professor Han. Before Yi-yeon can process that, he receives another shocking call. Woo-gyeom has escaped during treatment. The person who helped him is Park Han-jun. Everything was planned by Woo-gyeom for revenge. Years earlier, after the car accident, Woo-gyeom was taken to Chum Medical Center. When Chae Jung-soo learned that Woo-gyeom had Rh-negative blood, he decided to use him as the human subject for the treatment experiment. While Woo-gyeom's mother searched for her son, Detective Gong stalled her with excuses. Then Chief Oh helped forge a death certificate. After months of searching, Woo-gyeom's mother learned something was wrong. She collected testimony from emergency staff and Chum Medical employees and prepared to sue. She also protested outside Chum Medical, demanding the truth. This angered Chae. He ordered his men to abduct Woo-gyeom's mother, throw her into the river, and stage it as suicide. Meanwhile, because Professor Han's progress on the cure was too slow, Chae replaced him with another team and watched him closely to prevent information from leaking. By chance, Woo-gyeom woke up around that time. Professor Han feared Chae would use Woo-gyeom again, so he took him to the old house. Woo-gyeom wanted revenge for his mother, but he needed helpers. The best choices were Park Han-jun, a lawyer obsessed with saving his daughter, Cha Yi-yeon, the prosecutor known for his cold commitment to punishment, and reporter Jo, someone willing to report anything. His targets were Detective Gong and Chief Oh, who protected each other, along with Assemblyman Baek and Chum Medical Chairman Chae Jung-soo, who linked politics and business. But the plan changed when Chae captured Professor Han and had him killed. Before treating the third patient, Woo-gyeom requests a meeting with Chae. He tells Chae that his blood cannot save terminal patients forever. Each time blood is drawn, the body creates new blood, and the new blood contains less of the therapeutic component. The more diluted it becomes, the weaker the treatment. Woo-gyeom warns Chae not to get greedy. If Woo-gyeom fails a treatment in front of everyone, the one destroyed will not be Woo-gyeom alone. Chum Medical will collapse too. In truth, Woo-gyeom has already planned his escape. Before Professor Han died, he bribed a security guard. The moment Woo-gyeom finishes treating the third patient, the entire building will lose power for 3 minutes. Woo-gyeom uses the blackout to take the emergency stairs, receive tools from Han-jun, cut off his electronic ankle monitor, throw it to the basement level, and run the opposite way toward the rooftop. While police rush to the basement, he changes clothes, returns through another route, and gets into Han-jun's car outside. He disappears without anyone noticing, but the escape does not go perfectly. Han-jun notices a car following them and calls reporter Jo for help. After a sharp turn, he shakes the car off. Then another crisis appears. Woo-gyeom's abdominal wound is bleeding badly, and his life is in danger. Chae's men arrive to take him back, but reporter Jo reaches them in time. He is skilled in Taekwondo and kickboxing, and he helps Han-jun get Woo-gyeom away. Han-jun takes Woo-gyeom to the old house. Before losing consciousness, Woo-gyeom uses his blood to save Min-seo. Because Woo-gyeom has escaped, Chum Medical's stock price collapses. Shareholders pressure Chae relentlessly. Late that night, Woo-gyeom wakes up. Chae soon arrives with his men, determined to take him back. Woo-gyeom intends to use the moment to kill Chae, but Han-jun stops him. Police sirens grow closer. Woo-gyeom rushes at Chae and wounds his eye. Then he prepares to finish him. The first shot meant for Woo-gyeom is blocked by Han-jun, who takes the bullet instead. Even with guilt and rage tearing through him, Woo-gyeom continues toward revenge. Then the police arrive and shoot him. Woo-gyeom falls into the river. At the end, prosecutor Cha Yi-yeon holds a press conference and exposes the crimes of Chum Medical. Over several years, the organization committed hundreds of illegal treatment cases. In 223 cases, experiments were performed without family consent and the patients died. The evidence was provided by Woo-gyeom. Assemblyman Baek, Chief Oh, and Detective Gong all received the punishment they deserve. In truth, Woo-gyeom had already completed the cure for terminal diseases. He leaves the decision of whether to put it into production to Park Han-jun. Han-jun hesitates because the cure carries both hope and the shadow of everything used to create it. Then his phone rings. The caller is unknown. When Han-jun answers, the voice on the other end belongs to Lee Woo-gyeom. That is where the story ends. That's all for today's drama recap. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like, comment, and share. I'll see you in the next one.